The last few months have been tough. My wife, Catherine, had an affair with a colleague, and it seemed like everyone in the world knew about it, yet no one had the courage to say anything. I was as guilty as everyone else. For some strange reason, I hoped it would just end and everything would go back to normal. Of course, that was a fantasy, because things would never be the same. We had been married for 19 years and had 3 children. Rob, our oldest, was 18. Catherine was pregnant when we got married. A year later, Donna was born, and the following year, Darcy arrived, after which I had a vasectomy. They were good kids, and until recently, we never had any issues with them. Needless to say, the problems with the children were caused by their mother's extracurricular activities. For the past 3 years, Catherine had been working in the claims department of a major insurance company. When she started working overtime several evenings a week, the kids and I quickly noticed. She got a new hairstyle and joined a gym. Her wardrobe became more revealing, which didn't sit well with me. Donna and Darcy saw her having lunch with her department head at a fancy restaurant, but she never mentioned it. In desperation, I decided to follow her like a lovesick puppy. Her trips to motels with her lover were frequent and brazen. Although I didn't see the point, I still recorded the times and dates of several of their meetings. As the affair dragged on, the family began to fall apart. All of this happened without any real discussions. The children were angry with their mother for her betrayal. They were also angry with me for not confronting her and trying to hold the family together. I was too blind to realize that it was a hopeless situation. The family only came together at dinner, but even then, it was a tense ordeal. There was hardly any conversation, and as soon as each child finished eating, they quietly disappeared, usually leaving the house until bedtime. John, I can't put up with the kids' attitude for much longer. If you don't do something to straighten them out, I will. I'll take care of it. You've been saying that for a month now. I don't understand what's gotten into them. Why have they suddenly started acting like little rebels? If you have a solution, see if you can get some answers too. Oh, that wouldn't be a problem. The problem would be how to fix everything. I think now we'll figure it all out. Are you going to clue me in? Or is this some big secret? No secret. Tomorrow, I'm going back to my parents' place. Catherine wasn't happy about this news. She stopped clearing the table and sat back down with a heavy, determined thud. What the hell are you talking about, John? You can't commute to work from Frackville, and I can't take care of this place and the kids on my own. How is that going to solve anything? Actually, Catherine, you won't need to worry about taking care of the kids. They're coming with me. I didn't expect the frown and pressed lips in response, but it didn't surprise me either. Leaning her elbows on the table, my loving wife leaned forward and looked me in the eyes. You are not taking my kids out of this house. Not in a million years. What makes you think you can get away with such nonsense? They will come with me. Catherine sighed in frustration, stood up, and resumed clearing the table. She muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't make it out. After throwing the last of the dishes into the sink, she turned around. Why? Why is this happening? The best guess I have is that they're tired of being embarrassed. What on earth are you talking about? Mainly, it's about your affair with Brian Masterson. You've been so blatant about your infidelity that the entire family knows. You've shown no respect for your children or me. What? Are you going to deny it? Are you going to tell me that you're not spending several days a week in different motels? Are you going to say that I don't understand what's going on? I decided that I no longer wanted to continue the conversation. It would have been easiest to throw it all in her face, but I didn't have the heart. I pushed back my chair and left the room. Catherine stood by the sink, her hand on her hip. I noticed the defiant look on her face, as if she was daring me to bring up her infidelity. It felt like she had been teasing me all this time, just so she could have a reason to stop feeling guilty. This was a lecture I wasn't willing to sit through tonight. I had no desire to hear that I had pushed her to seek comfort elsewhere because I was a mediocre husband and a poor lover. Sure, I could have called her out for being unfaithful, but ultimately, the blame would have landed on me. I knew Catherine, and I knew she had everything she planned to say already prepared. My best option was not to engage at all. And what about your job? I'm quitting. I heard her shout my name as I walked out the door. I had no idea where the kids were. All their clothes and personal belongings were packed in Rob's Subaru. The van had over 100,000 kilometers on it, but I figured it had another 100,000 left. All my clothes and important documents were in the trunk of my Jeep. Catherine hadn't noticed any of this when she got home. We had all agreed that we could come back for anything we didn't manage to take during the first trip. I was certain Catherine was inspecting the house as I drove away. There was no turning back now. I decided I should call Donna. Donna always seemed to have everything under control. Rob was the oldest and the man of the house, but he didn't mind letting Donna take charge of most things. "Donna, it's Dad. Are you still at home?" "No, I'm heading to a motel. I should have told your mother what's happening, but I didn't explain why. I think it's best if you guys find somewhere else to stay for the night. Can you get in touch with Rob?" "No problem. Darcy and I are planning to stay with Betsy Cooper. I'm not sure if Rob has any plans, but I think I can reach him." "Good. Let's meet at the Waffle House on Lancaster Pike tomorrow at 6 in the morning. From there, we'll head to Frackville." "Dad, was Mom furious?" "I think so. I'll tell you all about it tomorrow." "Oh, after you talk to Rob, it might be a good idea to turn off your phone." After checking in at the Desca Motel, I turned off my cell phone. I had just finished showering when there was a knock on the door. I opened it, expecting an angry Catherine, but instead, I was greeted by a smiling Rob. There weren't too many motels in town. By 7 the next morning, we were already on our way to the coal regions. Catherine and I never got the chance to discuss my job situation. It didn't matter much since I was now unemployed. In these kinds of situations, the usual practice is to stash away as much cash as you can without drawing attention. If I had filed for divorce, I would have had to go through the process of declaring assets and equitable distribution. I decided to forget about all that. Nobody likes seeing their credit score climb, but in the circumstances, it seemed like a good idea. If I wasn't working, the kids could qualify for a lot of grants and other financial aid when it was time for college. I would make sure they got everything they needed, though it might not have been entirely fair. Living with my parents would also help cover many of the usual expenses. I was almost certain that Catherine wouldn't wait long before filing for divorce. I would likely agree to anything she demanded just to end the marriage. There wasn't much she could get since I didn't have a job, and the kids wouldn't go with her even if they were told to. All I could do now was sit back and wait. I had a basket of lemons, and I was going to make lemonade. It was great to be back in my hometown. The last time I lived there was right before leaving for college. After graduation, the nearest place I could find a decent job was reading. Catherine was originally from Baltimore, so she didn't mind being just a few hours' drive from home. We got married shortly before I started my final semester at the University of Pennsylvania. Catherine never finished her degree due to the pregnancy. She never had any desire to return to school. I think she went to college just to escape her parents and find a husband. Either way, I had won the marriage lottery. My reward was 3 wonderful kids and a wife who turned out to be difficult. Sure, I had regrets, but I wasn't the kind of person who lived in the past. Little did I know that my past would catch up with me so quickly. Since I had many old friends in the area, finding temporary work wasn't that hard. I was saving as much money as possible so Catherine couldn't get her hands on it. Things would be tough until she finally pushed through the divorce, if she ever did. All 3 kids pitched in without needing an invitation. Given the circumstances, I think they felt obligated. I didn't leave Catherine because they wanted me to, but it seemed that's what they thought. My parents reluctantly accepted money from us, though I didn't think they really needed it. They just didn't want me to feel like a burden. Catherine called 2 weeks later and asked if I was planning to keep paying the mortgage. I told her I wasn't. 2 weeks after that, she called again to inform me that her car insurance needed to be renewed. I gave her the same answer. Catherine tried to bring up her affair. She attempted to sound apologetic and sincere, but it didn't work. I listened patiently as she explained how her friendship with Masterson developed and eventually turned into a full-blown relationship. She assured me it was purely physical and nothing more. After a few minutes, she realized how absurd it all sounded and stopped mid-sentence. I didn't respond. "I'm sorry, John. I have no excuse for what I did. I sincerely regret it." After that, she stopped calling. I think my wife eventually realized that the marriage couldn't be saved and filed for divorce. She faced mortgage payments, car payments, and all the utility bills. Of course, I was obligated to pay those, but I felt that since thousands of other hopeless fathers avoided such things, I could too. For the moment, it was worth the risk. I signed the papers and the power of attorney for the sale of the house as soon as I received them. Now it was just a matter of time. Catherine didn't ask for anything other than the house. After covering expenses and fees, she wouldn't have much left. Rob was gathering all his paperwork for college. We had to stay in-state to afford tuition. Most grants would be hard to get because I'd have to provide a copy of last year's income tax return. I managed to explain my current employment situation and convinced some of them to waive the income requirement. Unfortunately, Rob had other, more pressing issues. My past was coming back to haunt me, and he was caught in the middle. "Dad, I've got a little problem. I assume you think I can help." A few weeks ago, I met this girl and I really like her. At least the conversation started on a high note. In high school, Rob had dated a few girls, but he'd never shown serious interest in any of them. It was nice to hear him acknowledge that he might be looking for something long-term. I'm guessing this isn't about the birds and the bees. No, I think I've got that part handled. I met her mom for the first time, and as soon as I introduced myself, she got upset. After I left, she told Shannon that she couldn't see me anymore. She's never done this with any of her previous boyfriends. Her mom didn't give her any further explanation. Shannon was a little mad at her mom, and eventually, she agreed to back down, but only if you talk to her. Let me get this straight. This girl's mom will let you two keep seeing each other, but only if she talks to me first? Basically, yeah. Shannon said she's never done anything like this before. I think I can find the time. You set it up and let me know where and when. Rob left the room with a big smile, and I sat there wondering why this woman felt the need to meet me before approving their relationship. That evening, Rob drove us to Shannon's house. It was an old place, located just off the main street. The house was in serious need of paint, and the tiled walkway should have been leveled years ago. Shannon was waiting for us at the front door, and she anxiously opened it as we approached. "Hi, I'm Shannon." She was cheerful and sweet. I understood why Rob liked her. "We really appreciate this, Mr. Ritchell. Sorry we had to invite you over like this, but my mom insisted. I hope you don't mind." "Don't worry about it. I'm sure we can sort everything out quickly." "Mom, Mr. Ritchell is here." My heart skipped a beat as my old high school and college love, Abigail Connor, walked into the room. "Hello, John." "Hi, Abby." The words slipped out automatically. An awkward silence filled the room, quickly broken by Rob. "You two know each other?" She didn't take her eyes off me. "Your father and I went to school together." Shannon seemed pleased with this new development. "Well, that should make everything easier, right? I have fresh coffee ready. I think we'll be more comfortable in the kitchen." I obediently followed her to the back of the house. As I went to sit down, she turned to the kids. "You two should wait in the living room. Turn on the TV and don't cause any trouble. I'll call you in a few minutes." Abby went to make coffee, and I drifted into memories. It was the fall semester of our senior year at the University of Pennsylvania. Abby and I had a fight because I didn't want to go home for Thanksgiving break. She left without me. While she was away, I had a bit too much fun, got drunk, and was arrested for public disturbance. My parents were upset, and Abby refused to speak to me when she got back. She was still angry when the semester ended, and she went home for Christmas alone. I wasn't on good terms with my mom and dad, so I stayed on campus for the holidays. That's when the bad news came. It was between Christmas and New Year's when Catherine approached me. According to her, during one of my drunken nights in the dorms, we had been intimate, and now she was pregnant. Given the situation with my parents at the time, I didn't want to upset them further. Without much thought, Catherine and I drove to Gretna Green that same day and got married. I didn't tell my parents until I graduated the following spring. Abby found out about the marriage when she came back to school after taking a few years off and immediately dropped out. I don't know if she ever finished. "Did you fall asleep?" Her words snapped me out of it as she placed a mug in front of me. She was 20 years older than when I had last seen her, and still beautiful. My mind raced, comparing what could have been with what was. Sorry, I wasn't ready for this. You'll have to give my brain a moment to catch up before I can be of any use. Talking with Abby had always been easy, and I always felt comfortable around her. I couldn't even remember what we had argued about before we parted ways. At that moment, I realized I didn't even know her married name. Rob had never mentioned Shannon's last name either. It was time to break the ice. I tried to stay calm and open. Is there a Mr. Abby, or are we going to discuss this just the two of us? She didn't smile at my weak attempt at humor. That's why I asked you to come here. I'm not looking for anything, but I hope we can avoid a problem. What do you mean, you're not looking for anything? John, I've never been married. I tried dating a few guys, but it never worked out. Most of them weren't interested in single moms and were just looking for something casual with no commitment. I still don't understand. Damn it, John. You're Shannon's father. There, I said it. I hoped I could explain it in a more delicate way, but sometimes things don't go as planned. Of course, I had no idea. Can I have some more coffee? That's it? That's all you have to say? I think I understand why you told them they couldn't see each other anymore. Unfortunately, I think it might be too late. By the time I figured out that you're Rob's father, they had already gotten close. Oh God, are you telling me my son and my daughter are involved? I'm almost certain. I thought siblings were supposed to hate each other. The fresh coffee was too hot to drink. I blew on the edge of the cup while the mother of my daughter stared at me, waiting for the wise words I didn't have. Abby, I don't think we have much choice, do we? We have to tell them and hope it's not too late. The mood around the table shifted suddenly. I'm sorry, John. I should have told you, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. You had just gotten married, and I didn't want to ruin everything. And instead, you decided to complicate your own life? I have a beautiful, smart daughter. I didn't ruin my life. I just had to make some adjustments. I finished my coffee and leaned back in my chair. By the way, John, I don't mean to pry, but where's Catherine? I'm afraid we've grown apart. I always thought that was the appropriate phrase, though I never imagined I'd have the chance to use it. Oh, I'm sorry, I asked. We sat in silence for a few moments. John, do you want to tell them yourself, or should I? You tell them, and I'll back you up as much as I can. Less than a minute later, Shannon and Rob were sitting with us at the kitchen table. Abby slid a folded piece of paper across the plastic surface to Shannon. Oh my God. Shannon's reaction immediately caught Rob's attention, even though she hadn't unfolded the paper yet. What's going on? This is the mysterious birth certificate I wasn't supposed to see until I turned 21. Rob looked confused. What's so special about a birth certificate? Shannon didn't answer. She unfolded the document and stared at it, her mouth wide open. No, this can't be true. This has to be a mistake. Mom, tell me this isn't true. Abby didn't respond to her daughter. She was staring at the floor. Rob tried to look at the paper, but Shannon kept it away from him. Mom, please, tell me this isn't true. Still, there was no answer. In frustration, Shannon threw the birth certificate across the table and ran out of the room in tears. Dad, what the hell is going on? I'm sorry, Rob. It's been hard for us to tell you, but you need to know. Know what? What the hell? Shannon is your sister. The kitchen fell into silence. Somewhere deep in the house, we could still hear Shannon crying. Rob slowly stood up and left the room. I was sure he had a million questions, but he wasn't seeking answers right now. He had more important things on his mind. After a few moments, the sobs began to quiet down. Abby, do you happen to have a beer? Abby and I had just finished our second beers when Rob showed up again. Can we go home now, Dad? 2 days later, Rob decided to talk to me again. The house had a gloomy atmosphere, and I felt relieved that something was finally happening. I want a DNA test. I have the money to pay for it, and I won't take no for an answer. Where can we do it? There's a lab in Allentown. Each test costs $200. I need tests from Shannon, you, and me. Well, if we're going down that route, we might as well test the girls too. I'll cover the cost. Do we have to go there in person, or can they send the test kits by mail? Both, but I'd prefer to go in person. Great. You get everything organized, and we'll make a productive day out of it. I'll even treat you to dinner at Olive Garden. Later that day, I called my wife's company. I spoke with the head of the legal department. He didn't care about my family situation and told me so right away, but he was very interested in how Brian Masterson had been paying for the motel rooms he was using. When I mentioned that Masterson was Catherine's boss and that I wanted more information about the company's stance on workplace affairs, he quickly ended the conversation. A few days later, Catherine called. For some strange reason, she had lost her job and was having trouble paying her bills. She seemed upset when I told her I hadn't been able to find work and was living off my parents' support. She wanted me to give her enough money to move back to Baltimore. She had put the house up for sale, but things weren't going well. She hoped to leave Pennsylvania before her car was repossessed. She tried to explain her affair with Masterson again, but quickly gave up when I didn't respond. Although she didn't mention it, I knew that Brian Masterson had also been fired. She never understood what had happened. 2 days later, everything changed. I walked into the house and found Rob and Shannon sitting on the couch, grinning like two Cheshire cats. They just sat there with goofy smiles on their faces while I cleared my throat. All right, what's going on? Why the gloomy faces? It was a weak attempt at a joke. They laughed anyway. Do you want the good news or the bad news? Don't you think you're a bit mixed up? We don't think so. Maybe some of it is bad, but overall, it's pretty good. Stop messing with my head. Donna and Darcy are both your daughters. The DNA matched. I suppose they'll be happy about that? They don't know yet. What aren't you telling me? Shannon is your daughter too. Another near-perfect match. I'm still a bit confused. Where does the interesting part start? Don't get upset, but I'm not your son. I wasn't expecting that. I loved Rob with all my heart and raised him as any good father would. Now he was telling me I wasn't his father. I need another beer. The smiles faded from Rob and Shannon's faces. Things suddenly got a bit more serious and less carefree. I came back with a new bottle and dropped into my chair. Dad, this doesn't change anything between us. You're still my father, no matter what the DNA test says. I don't know who the biological father is, but you'll always be my dad. I downed half the new bottle. I don't know whether to be happy or sad. I don't know if this is good news or bad news. I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. My newly discovered daughter and my former son just sat on the couch, saying nothing. Have you told your mother yet, Shannon?
No.
Why don't you two go over and share the news with her? I have a lot to think about. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen, trying to stay out of the situation. They had always been kind. John, if there's anything we can do, please let us know. We won't give advice, but we'll be happy to help in any other way. Dad had always been there for me. I wanted to do the same for Rob. Abby found me a few hours later at the Circle Bar. I don't know how she knew I was there, and I don't remember how I got drunk. Looking back, I don't even understand why I drank that much. Things weren't all that bad. Everything just felt mixed up. It had been 10 years since I last overindulged in alcohol, and now I had no real excuse for doing so. I woke up on Abby's couch. Somehow, she had gotten me there. I was still fully dressed, except for my shoes. I realized, much to my embarrassment, that I had wet myself. I smelled freshly brewed coffee, but the bathroom took priority. When I came back from the bathroom, she was waiting for me at the kitchen table. Bathrooms in these old houses were always on the second floor, so I had to climb the stairs to use it. I managed to win that battle, though just barely. Abby didn't offer me anything other than coffee, which was probably the best thing in the circumstances. I really messed up. I don't even know who to apologize to first. Looks like you weren't the only one with Catherine that weekend. You just drew the short straw. Damn it, I don't even remember being with her. I assumed I had been because of the way she approached me. I had no alibi and no way to prove I hadn't slept with her. Like a fool, I took the easy way out. I must be the biggest sucker in the world. There was no response from the other end of the table. Finally, she spoke. Hey, don't look at me like that. I completely agree with your self-assessment. I don't know what to do. I thought the divorce was already underway. It is, but I feel like I should be doing something else. I think you should start by taking a shower and shaving. I was in pretty bad shape, and I felt awful. Could you give me a ride home? For the next few days, Rob was in a cheerful mood. The girls seemed content with their situation, at least genetically, though they were still unhappy with their mother, whom they felt they were tied to. My mom and dad supported me as much as they could without sticking their noses where they didn't belong, and that was greatly appreciated. Rob was the first to decide we needed to take more action. Dad, I want to make lemonade. What are you talking about? Remember how you always said, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade? I nodded in agreement. Well, we've got a whole bunch of lemons. Let's get started. How proud can a father be? She needs to know, Dad. Mom has to know who might be my real father. It was at a fraternity, right? That means one of your brothers is my biological father, and he let you take the blame. Is there any way to get her to give you a few names? Wow, you're implying it's more than one name. You don't seem to think highly of your mother. Not after what she did to you back then and what she's doing now. She was unfaithful then and still is. How on earth did you stay with her all these years? I ignored the last question. I have an idea. I don't know if it'll work, but it's worth a try. Later that day, I called my loving wife. I tried to organize my thoughts about what I wanted to say, but I was worried I'd lose track and mess it up in the end. John, what can I do for you? I wasn't expecting your call. From the tone of her voice, I feared she might interpret the call as a reconciliation attempt. I was determined to be very careful not to give her the wrong impression. I was thinking about our last conversation. You mentioned something about wanting to move in with your sister. Are you still considering that? Yes. Have you thought of a way to help me? If you did, I'd be grateful. I can give you $2,000 to help you get started, but I need something in return. All right, that would really help. What do you need? I'm guessing you don't know that I had DNA tests done for all the kids? Oh no. Her muted exclamation made it clear she hadn't known about the tests. I'm sorry, John. I was hoping that would never come up. It seemed like you and Rob were doing so well. I found it interesting that she mentioned Rob and not Darcy or Donna. What about the girls? I don't understand what you mean, John. What do the girls have to do with this? Doesn't their DNA test concern you? No, why would I be concerned? Her response seemed sincere, and I decided not to push the topic further. I would like to know the name or names of the men who might be Rob's father. Give me that, and you can have the $2,000. The pause on the other end of the line was much longer than I expected. Catherine, whoever this guy was, he didn't think enough of you to make you an honest woman. Why do you feel you owe him any secrecy? He used you and left you for me to deal with. I'm the one who deserves to know, not him. All right. There were 3 of them. I don't know which one is the father. I'd appreciate it if you tell me their names. Kyle Simmons, Ray Thorenson, and Philip Berger. I knew all of them. 3 spoiled rich kids who thought they could get away with anything. They were all devoted members of the fraternity, but turned out to be less than honorable. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. What else do you need, John? If you're not staying in the house and you can't sell it, can I take it over? Oh my God, yes. I can't sell it, and more than anything, I'd love to pass it on to you. Even if I find a buyer, I won't make enough from the sale to cover the real estate commission. You can have it as soon as I move out. I'll sign any papers you need. John, I also have a small request. What is it, Catherine? Can you arrange for me to see the kids? Nothing big, but I am still their mother, and I'd really like to see them from time to time. I'm sure I can figure something out. 2 days later, Catherine got her $2,000, and I took ownership of the house and the mortgage. Rob had no trouble getting information about the possible sperm donors. Getting DNA data was a bit more difficult, but not impossible. Ray Thorenson was a middle school teacher in Altoona. All public employees are required to have their DNA data on file. These records weren't available to the general public, but Rob had no trouble finding a way to get what he needed. Ray Thorenson wasn't Rob's father. Philip Berger was an employee of the Ohio prison system. Apparently, Phil had a fondness for younger girls the state felt shouldn't be involved with men old enough to be their fathers. It's not for me to judge, but I was glad to know where Philip was. Of course, people like Philip are always in the database. I don't know how Rob accessed it, but it turned out that Phil wasn't Rob's father either. If Catherine had been honest with me, that meant Kyle Simmons must have been the one. The search continued. Seymour Schlamp and I went to high school together. He attended Dickerson and earned a law degree when I went to Penn State. Seymour and law were not a match made in heaven. He wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. In fact, he was a bit sloppy, to put it mildly. However, he was the perfect candidate for our project. Using the Nittany Lions alumni news and fraternity websites, we tracked down Lieutenant Colonel Simmons at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. Kyle had been a big deal in college and seemed to have made a career out of it. Abby had a cousin in the Pennsylvania National Guard who was able to get Kyle's DNA data. We had a match. Houston, we are ready for liftoff. Catherine moved out of the house by the end of the week. Instead of catching up on the overdue mortgage payments, I simply refinanced the whole thing, removing Catherine's name from all the documents. I moved back into the house, but the kids wanted to stay in Frackville until the end of the school year. Rob wanted to stay close to Shannon. I suppose I wanted to be close to Abby, but there was still a lot of work to be done. I was surprised by the poor job done by Catherine's lawyer. It would have been easy for him to figure out that I hadn't quit my job, but had simply taken a leave of absence. It turned out he never checked. I got the impression he had used a template divorce form he downloaded from the internet. There were still a few months until the final decision, but I didn't expect any issues. The worst part about going back to work was Rob losing his college scholarship. The good part was that I could pay for his education or get a loan. Abby worked in an office that handled billing for doctors. It was a 9-to-5 job, 5 days a week. I started spending all my weekends in Frackville. Rob and Shannon got along well, but there was one small hitch. Shannon spent a lot of time with Darcy and Donna. Mostly, it was shopping trips, but Rob wasn't thrilled about having to share her with others. Abby and I found it amusing, in a good way. For some reason, Abby and I acted more like friends than former lovers. It seemed neither of us was ready to take the first step toward any kind of intimacy. Seymour flooded the court system with as many documents as he could think of. He worked on the shotgun theory, believing that if he filed enough claims against Simmons, 1 or 2 might stick. He also hoped that at least one of them would settle partially, so he could claim some of his fees. I hadn't paid him a cent, but he didn't seem to mind as long as he had a stake in it. I didn't want any lawsuits, but it would be nice if we could cover Rob's college tuition. It would make things easier when the girls started school. Things between Rob and me stayed the same. The DNA issue didn't seem to bother either of us. Rob was just happy that he wasn't Shannon's brother. I was glad to be her father, though I wished I could have spent more time with her while she was growing up. She was caught in the middle of all this, but she didn't seem too upset about it. Life started to settle down. I cleaned up the house, but I hated living alone. Rob and Shannon had graduated from high school and were both working. In 2 months, Rob was set to enroll in a state college. Shannon was planning to start a 2-year program in medical administration at the local Reading Area Community College. Catherine called from Baltimore. Her relationship with her parents wasn't going well. She was still living with her sister and couldn't afford her own place. She had trouble finding a job due to poor references from her last employer. She regretted everything and wished she could turn back time. She hoped I could forgive her. While forgiveness from me was out of the question, she was glad to hear that the girls were planning a trip to Baltimore to visit her. The conversation ended on a positive note. By the end of the summer, my life started to come together. The divorce was final and required no further conditions. Kyle Simmons admitted to being Rob's father on the advice of his lawyer. Instead of a financial settlement, it was agreed that Kyle would cover all of Rob's college expenses for 4 years. In the end, Kyle also paid Seymour's fee. To make matters worse for old Kyle, his wife filed for divorce, which entitled her to 49% of Kyle's upcoming pension. Using simple math, Kyle's wife figured out that Rob had been conceived just 4 weeks before their wedding. Combined with a few other poor decisions over the years, this was the last straw. The nicest surprise was Abby showing up at my house. It was too late for dinner, but perfect timing for a bottle of wine. She had nothing to say until we settled in comfortably. "John, I need a favor." I liked how she started the conversation because I felt indebted to her and wanted to do something for her. Shannon is starting classes in a few weeks, and I'm not thrilled about her driving to work, especially in the winter, through the mountains. I wanted to ask if it would be too much trouble for her to stay here with you. Of course. The girls are coming back, and I think they'll all get along just fine. There's one more thing. Shannon and I have never been apart before, and I'm hesitant to leave her alone. She won't be alone. I'll be here, and so will the girls. From the look of frustration on her face, I realized I'd said something wrong. Sorry, Abby. I think that was the wrong response. I can see you expected something else. Can you help me out here? I swear, John Ritchell, you're the most clueless man I know. I'm not letting you off the hook this time. I'll sit here until you figure it out. Now, pour me some more wine. It took me only 5 seconds to realize what was happening. Before I even finished pouring the wine, I was smiling from ear to ear. Well, everything worked out just as it should have. Rob is thriving at Penn State and comes home whenever he can. Shannon has great grades and will finish school 6 months early. Donna was accepted into James Madison University in Virginia with a good scholarship. Darcy is still undecided about college. Abby, now Mrs. Ritchell, runs a small medical practice that serves 3 counties. She hopes Shannon will be ready to take over when the baby arrives. We make a lot of lemonade. As a famous English writer always says, life goes on.